This is Things Police See, first-hand accounts, with your host, Steve Gold.
Guys, welcome to the podcast. The best way to introduce this is just to say the phrase, Inglewood up to no good. This interview is really intense. It's long, but so worth it. I interview Dave Carrasquillo, a friend of mine who was an Inglewood cop for 20 years. His stories, I didn't even come close to encapsulating all the craziness that he's seen. He has many more stories of equal intensity, but I got what I could in about an hour, a little over, I think an hour and a half, something like that. It's just really intense and really, I think, really interesting. I think you guys will really like it. I mean, we talk about a Friday-like character named Drumstick. He's a Inglewood blood. We talk about charred bodies. We talk about Dave getting into a situation where he has to use his firearm on a guy that's like a zombie. The guy's it's attempted kidnapping. He's blasting the guy. The guy won't die. It's insane, and it's really, really interesting. And at the end, we talk about some stuff cops can do and how to help themselves with trauma and how the job's affected him. So I'm just really excited to get it out to you guys. Dave is a super, super good dude, super sweet guy, and I'm really thankful that he came on. So without further ado, my interview with Dave Carrasquillo. Dave, thank you for coming on the podcast, man. I appreciate it.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me.
I'm so looking forward to this. I met you about a year ago, and you you policed at like one of the most famous cities to police, I think, in the country because of hip-hop, rap, all that stuff. Inglewood, California.
That's it. That's correct.
How long did you do there? How many years were you a cop?
Total, I was a cop for 20 years, and then prior to Inglewood, I was in Inglewood for almost 16. I was at the California Department of Corrections as a correctional peace officer, and I did about a little over 4 years there.
So working in the jails probably prepared you for the mayhem that you were about to face in the streets of Inglewood.
Yeah, it definitely did. It's because it was a state prison. Things were ran differently than like the county jail, and these guys actually lived a population of about 5,000 inside these huge concrete walls and fences, and they function as society does. School, work, things like that. So it was like policing a small city of about 5,000 that were all criminals, murderers, killers, and what have you. So yeah, it was pretty chaotic at times, but it was quite a good experience.
How good did it feel to graduate, as it were, from being a prison guard to like becoming a real cop?
Well, the funny thing was, going through an academy for the state corrections, presented pretty much the acceptance of, dealing with domestic violence issues and the not having to do like the code 3 runs and driving a vehicle, with your hair on fire.
What's a code 3?
A code 3 is, a high priority call,
Okay.
An emergency call. We'll require lights and sirens and, special authorization by law that allows you to drive in such a manner. But the prison was a prison. You had domestic violence issues, believe it or not, male on male. That's his woman, and somebody else was, looking at him the wrong way, and then they go back to their dorm and they hash it out. So he had issues like that were domesticated, and then he had issues where dealing with drug trafficking and attempt murders, stabbings. Obviously he didn't have any shootings for the most part, but everything else pretty much existed as crime was concerned, and documentation and writing it and handling was done pretty much the same. So it laid a good foundation for dealing with a very volatile, very hostile environment. But it was a great sensation to be able to be free, so to speak, and to be outside of the walls where I don't have to constantly look, left and right, over my shoulder all the time.
I mean, in a lot of ways, it's like you're in prison. When you go on your shift, you're in there with them. I mean, I'm sure you can't walk around with your, I don't know if they were doing cell phones back when you were a prison guard, but Nowadays, I know you can't have your phone on. You can't be looking at your phone. You can't be making calls. You can't really do anything.
Yeah. One, we didn't have the access to having cell phones back then. Two, they were like these big old, like little suitcases, right? So
right. Bag
it was
phone.
going to make it really obvious, right? But yeah, I mean, to now the standards are you're not supposed to bring in your own personal cell phones for obvious reasons. They can utilize them to, make phone calls and conduct criminal activity.
So, Dave, can you take us to you as a young officer in Inglewood Police Department, the first hot call you ever responded to, like the first call that ever really got your adrenaline going?
I guess first week on the job. It was like going through orientation. It was like about 2 weeks of use of force training and department policy and procedures as far as driving and responding to calls and things like that. So that took about 2 weeks, in our orientation. And then the very first week on the job, it was expected that because of the area that you're going to get probably into something pretty deep, foot pursuit, a fight, handle a shooting, a homicide, or actually getting into a shooting yourself. So the very first week on my first shift with my field training officer, and, it was nighttime. It had to be around 8, 9 o'clock at night. It was in the summertime, and sure enough, the help call comes out, and you hear the officers on the radio saying that they were in a pursuit, and they had, just, responded to 8th Ave and 84th Street, and they were involved in an officer-involved shooting. So my field training officer, he's driving, like a bat out of hell. We get to the location, and sure enough, we were just down the street, and there's, you can smell it and you can taste it, the gunpowder.
Yeah.
And it's still in the air, and it's like, whoa, this is real. And sure enough, you had the two officers that were involved in the shooting. They had one subject that was inside of a parked vehicle inside the driveway of a residence at gunpoint and giving them commands. So we start setting up a perimeter. We start setting up, closing off certain things. And my partner at the time, which was my field training officer, advised me, okay, you stay here with the, at this corner right here, and go ahead and don't let anybody come in. So I'm sitting there, and there was another young officer who I had been in the academy with, who I'm standing next to at the time, because we were both, he's got one end of the street, I got the other end of the street, and we kind of, as we're setting up the perimeter tape, sit there and go, hey man, this is crazy. This is the kind of crap we signed up for.
Right.
But sure enough, you see the the officers starting to set up a tactical plan, and apparently what had happened was they were chasing two individuals of the gangster style life, doing the typical evading the police officers and driving fast left and right, and they actually wind up going to their actual own residence. So it comes to be later on, as I found out, this was a very well-known gang member, gang house, multiple radio calls, multiple amounts of responses to the location, for gang activity, domestic violence issues, drug activity. So what happened is one of the occupants inside the vehicle, which was the passenger, exited the vehicle. While he's exiting, the gun that's in his hand or in his lap falls off and it hits the ground. In the attempt to recover the gun, he gets obviously shot at, ducks, hits over the fence, and he's gone. Well,
is this his own house?
This is well, no. The person's house was the actual driver who was inside the vehicle.
Okay.
So the officers actually shot, and some of the rounds actually hit the car, and it was understood at the time that the driver, who was later identified as one of the who lives at the actual residence, thought he had been shot. So for officer safety, instead of pursuing, the other suspect who had just hopped over the fence, which was only like about 5 feet away, they needed to clear the vehicle first. They start giving him verbal commands. He's not responding, so they thought they had a possible, been shot and possibly either dead or on its way to becoming dead. So that's when everybody else responds. We formulate a team. I'm sitting on the outside perimeter. They go in. They check him out. Sure enough, the guy's sitting there just playing possum. He hasn't been shot. I mean, nothing's been happening. They're hitting him, and trying to wake him up. Come to find out, he hadn't been shot. He hadn't been grazed, nothing. And they took him into custody, and that was the first hot call that I ever had, as a cop, was an officer involved shooting. And then, the first week I had, had a homicide and gang member had been shot. And so much had happened. I mean, it was just nonstop.
Wow. It's like right away, baptism by fire. You're just in it.
Yeah. I mean, it was a typical, what used to be said is, welcome to Inglewood. That's the way it was done.
So was that guy? Was he just sitting in the car, just not responding, looking straight ahead, or was he communicating at all?
No, he was actually laying down. Well, you got to understand the criminal activity or the criminal element. The typical gang member, as he's driving through the neighborhood, he's got this hoopty, little piece of shit car.
Right.
And he's laid back in the car,
Is that like the gangster lean they talk about?
It's a gangster lean inside of a vehicle, but they do it for a particular reason. Is because they use the the door jamb, for protection for their head, and they lean back, so that they're not as easy of a target if they're being shot at by a rival gang member.
Wow, it's like a tactical way to operate their vehicle.
These
guys have tactics.
They have tactics. You got to give them credit. They're sitting there. Wow. They're trying to maintain. They try to stay alive. So they'll use the vehicle as, as a barrier between them and rounds coming down range.
That's fascinating. Wow. All right, can you add some levity here? Can you remember a humorous call that you went to, something that was kind of funny, or a situation that was funny?
There was always, stuff that was happening from time to time that was funny.
Was it like the movie Friday, like every day except for the murders and stuff?
Yeah, it was. I mean, to not put, you got to understand, Inglewood's a very dynamic city, and it's and what it's comprised of. It's not just, everyone thinks, it's a bunch of blacks that live there or Hispanics that live there. There's every single race that lives there. There's white, there's Asian, there's black, Hispanic.
I met some white hipsters that lived there. I was like, what? They're like, yeah, we live in Inglewood. I'm like,
yeah,
really? Okay.
Yeah, it's and then the city itself, when you talk about being violent, it's violent because at the time when I used to work gangs, the statistics were, this was in the early 2000s, that out of 120,000 citizens in the city, about 20,000 were registered gang members.
Oh my gosh!
So you're looking at, I don't know, what would be the percentage there? Is it like about 12% of your population are known documented gang members. And then there was another saying that it was all roads lead to Inglewood, which is very true because at the end of Inglewood, it's the mouth on Century Boulevard. It's the entry to LAX, one of the most busiest airports in the world.
Right.
And so it drew so many different people. I mean, at any given day, we would have over 1 million people in the city because of the airport.
I remember when my family and I were taking a flight last fall, and I called you, and I was like, hey, can we eat here? You're like, no. Can we go over here? You're like, no. You're like, why don't you eat in the airport, Steve? Because, you're on Google and everything looks great, But
oh, yeah. You might even have some, like, Yelp reviews that are like, yeah, it's a good place to eat. Just don't eat there, past, sunset or something like that.
Right.
But, and the funny thing is that, the community, they grow accustomed to it. They're used to, it's like bizarre, and I'm going to go back to, answering your question, but they're so immune to it. They will walk over a dead body like it's nobody's business. Or, somebody's been shot and killed down the street. They don't really care. They need to get from one point to the other because seeing somebody shot in the street is like...
That's not going to slow them down. They got stuff to do.
Well, no, exactly. But it's like it's typical. It's typical. Obviously things have changed, like in general... in the greater Los Angeles area, where crime has decreased tremendously in Los Angeles County over the years. But at the time, statistically speaking, we had gone through a lot of there was an increase in violent crimes, not just homicides. I had done a study back in the early 2000s at the time where the peak of the homicides had occurred, and it was we were looking at the city of Los Angeles was having, for every square mile, which is about 400 square miles, they were having about 0.6 homicides per square mile. The city of Inglewood, being just over 10 square miles, was having about 3.5 homicides per square mile.
Wow.
So the tendency of the violence was a lot greater in a smaller city than it was in this this big city of Los Angeles.
Sure.
So it was a very violent city to live in, robberies and shootings and everything. But anyways, going back to your question,
it doesn't sound like anything fun happened.
Right, something fun,
Pretty intense.
Certain things were just comical, how somebody got shot or saw somebody got killed, or not to be mean or dehumanize the situation, but you had to laugh at things sometimes just to keep sane.
And like you said, it becomes typical. It's like you're dealing with it day in and day out. It's like you're regular.
Yeah, regular. I mean, I remember responding back to the locker room sometimes, and I would have blood on my shoes or I had blood on my clothes, and it ain't my blood, and it was just, it splattered, or you picked up something and there was blood, and you had to be really careful. But it was just typical.
Yeah.
So something funny. Okay, so let me see here. Had quite a few funny stuff happen, but one that I remember. Okay, so my partner and I were pretty young cops, so we had like 2 years on the job. And we're in a place that's called the Bottoms. And there's a street called Barton and 10th Ave. It's an intersection. We call it the Bottoms because it came down the hill. On top of the hill was the top, and on the bottom of the hill was called the bottom, right?
Right.
Figure that one out. It will simplify it for you, right?
I get it, I think.
But they were actually, there were projects in the bottom of the hill, which was about close to about a square mile of these buildings, and there was, government housing, Section 8, and it was just horrible. And there's gangs that, it was a particular gang that was down there. It was a blood gang. They were known for being extremely violent. To this day, they're still considered to be very, very, very violent. And my partner and I are what we called, we're sitting back in a black and white, but we're obsing drug trafficking, so it's hand-to-hand deals. You got two guys. One guy is the contact guy. He walks up to the car who's coming by to buy drugs, crack cocaine, whatever they're selling for the day. Majority of the time it was crack.
Okay.
Rock cocaine. And you have the two other guys that are the lookouts. So we sat there and we looked at them and said, okay, that's another cell, that's another cell. We went and we decided, okay, we're going to put this out. We're going to stop these guys. And we did. So we had put it out on the air. Okay, we're monitoring drug activity, have some units respond. We're going to go ahead and take them down. So being young, we're stupid, right? Instead of waiting for backup, we're like, no, we're going to go take these guys down.
It's for pussies.
Yeah, backup's for assholes, right? No. So they're sitting there, and we're watching them. Sure enough, we go take them down. We put the takedown lights on them, and we hit them hard. We just bum rush them with the car. Like we're going to hit them with the car, but we don't. Like lethal intervention, right? So they get startled real quick. They don't run, come out. We're at gunpoint and stop. Fucking police.
Right.
And they actually follow our commands. So as soon as they start, they put their hands up instead of running, which we really thought they were going to run. They don't. I recognize quite a few of the guys that are there from previous contacts. Like two guys were on parole, active parole, and another guy was on on probation. So those were violations alone as it were. They shouldn't be hanging out with one another, much less selling drugs, right?
Sure.
So as we're calling out the commands, we ask for what's called a 1033, which is emergency traffic only. We got three at gunpoint. We need additional units to respond so we can take them into custody. The crime was obviously drug sales. So as this is going down, maybe about 30 seconds go by. To my left-hand side, I was a driver to my left-hand side. In between the projects and the buildings, all of a sudden, shots are fired, and shots are being fired right at us. So we're actually being ambushed now. Rounds are coming down range, and when they hear, when you say you can hear the rounds whizzing by you,
yeah,
and it's exactly what I'm listening to. It's zoom, 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 and I come back and I take cover, get on the other side of the vehicle, and my partner starts putting out the information, does a great job of putting that out. I said, I got the shooters. You go ahead and watch the suspects in the front. So even though it was only 2 of us, now we got 3 here, and I could see the shooters, which wind up being 2. There were 2 male blacks shooting right at us. And by the time we come back and recover to shoot back, you see the suspects, and they're running northbound up on Crenshaw Boulevard towards Century. So we're kind of between a rock and a hard place here, because now we got these guys that are shooting at us, and then we got these 3 guys that most likely will probably have a gun. Well, in the midst of the whole shooting, apparently, these guys take an opportunity. Instead of running, they dump. So they get rid of their stuff, whatever they had. So if they did have a gun, it wasn't on them. These guys were obviously either laid back. Those are the guys that were protecting them, in case there was needed to be a shooting. These guys were going to go and take care of business for them. Well, they did. They did their job, right? So as that's happening, units start responding. I put out description of the suspect. Long story short, units start flooding the area, and they can't find the suspects. They probably just dipped into one of the other, it was a abandoned building or something. They got away. So it was like, well, Dave, why didn't you shoot back? Well, you got to understand that my backdrop was Crenshaw Boulevard, which is probably one of the busiest streets in Los Angeles County. So for me to shoot at them, let's say if I miss, and my backdrop is, okay, here comes a nice family coming from church Sunday night. As they're driving through, one of the stray bullets, hits the kid in the back of the head, or hits him on the side of the head. So not a good thing. It's, your backdrop's not, it's not safe. So we wind up taking these guys into custody. As we're taking them into custody, there's a little bit of resistance. Next thing you know, they're getting their asses beat. Yeah, you just don't resist.
Right.
Look, just put the handcuffs on. You're going to be okay. We're going to take you to jail. Do what we got to do. So they start resisting. So they get tuned up, as it used to be said.
Little pain compliance.
A little pain compliance. So some of the more senior guys, whose names I won't mention, responded to the location, and it's just, they start going to town. Because these guys were known. They were violent criminals. We knew who they were. They had been, guys had been in prison for attempt murder. We're not dealing with some nice guys here.
Right.
So they wind up putting them into custody, and we didn't have anything else. We didn't find the guns. We didn't find no drugs. Obviously, they ditched them when they started shooting at us. We really didn't have anything other than the fact that these guys had, been smoking weed, and they had been drinking alcohol. So what do you got? Drunk in public, right?
Right.
So no harm, no foul. The casings were recovered, and we go back to the location. And a couple of the units respond. They take 2 of the guys, and we were left with 1 of the guys. And he was one of 3 brothers of this blood gang who, and he's sitting in the back of the police car. We got him in custody, so we're doing all the contact information. We're doing our field interview cards, and yeah, sure, we just been ambushed, but that's the way you did it in Inglewood. We're we're fine now. We're safe. Everybody's
right.
clearing. The other guys, we're going to finish up our paperwork, and we're the only unit now that's left. So
it seems weird.
But I'm telling you, man, this is, hey, no harm, no foul. Everybody's okay. Nobody scratched. You're fine. Okay, shake it off. Let's go.
Wow.
Get back to work.
Yeah.
And here comes now one of the brothers, and he had a moniker. The guy in the car, his moniker was Elbow. Don't ask me why. That was his moniker.
Okay.
But I can tell you the moniker of the other brother that's coming up. His name is Drumstick. Okay.
Yes.
His name is Drumstick. So Drumstick's walking up to me, and I looked at him, and I go, "Hey, man, what's up, Drumstick?" Because I already knew this guy.
Right.
He goes, "Man, what the fuck? Man, what you doing with my blood inside the car?" And I look, "Hey, Drumstick, man, you got to go. This ain't about you.
Right.
You got to go." "Man, but you got my blood inside the car." And it was literally his blood brother. And we knew this, So I'm trying to tell him, I go, "Look, dude, not a good time. Go."
Right.
He's obviously faded, meaning he'd been drinking. So he was drunk, but functional drunk, able to walk, able, to manage. He was still in control of his faculties, I guess you could say. So the funny thing is, he's got this big bucket of chicken. Now, he was known for having chicken, and it's fried chicken.
Right.
And it's this, guess what? They're all drumsticks. right? They're chicken legs.
Yes.
Hence the nickname, the moniker, drumstick. Because this guy was always eating. It was Louisiana fried chicken, and it was situated right there off of Century Boulevard, just west of Crenshaw. So he sits there, and he's standing there, and I'm at the trunk of the car finishing up my paperwork, and he just won't go away. He's just being a nuisance, and he's trying to look inside the car, talk to his brother, and I go, if you don't walk away, we're gonna have an issue. So the last thing I wanted to do is sit here and have more paperwork to do
right.
and take another guy to jail because I have to already go back to the station, write up a report about this whole, how this whole thing went down, the drug, sale, the shooting and being ambushed and all this other crap. I just don't want to deal with it no more. So I tell him, I go, hey man, you need to kick rocks. You need to bounce. He just won't leave. So I literally got upset. Like, it's like, why won't this guy, he's just leave me alone.
Just leave.
Just leave.
Yeah.
Because for the most part, yeah, what should I do? He's interfering with a, police investigation, California Penal Code 148, inhibiting or stopping a peace officer from doing his duties. So he just won't walk away. And I walked up to him finally, and he's holding this bucket of chicken right just at his chest, right?
Right.
So I go, what am I going to do to piss this guy off to get him to get the hell out of here? So I go, drumstick. He goes, what? And as soon as he does that, I come up with an open hand uppercut. And I sweep up, hit the bottom of the bucket of the chicken, and pop this sucking thing out of his hands. And all of a sudden, chicken drumsticks are flying everywhere. I mean, they're just like all over the place. And he goes, man, why'd you do that? I go, get the fuck out of here, man. I already told you, get your shit and go. He goes, man, you fucked up. So he goes and he gets his empty bucket of chicken, picks it up, and I'm like, well, at least he's picking up the trash. Instead of just walking away, he gets on his hands and knees, and he starts picking up every single drumstick and putting it back in the bucket. I go, damn, I didn't expect him to pick up and clean up that good, but what the hell? He's doing it, right?
Yeah.
So as soon as he gets the last drumstick in there, he looks at me, he goes, man, you fucked up. And then he starts walking away, and I'm looking at him, puts his hand inside the bucket of chicken, pulls out a drumstick, and he starts going to town. Starts eating this thing.
Oh, my God.
And I'm like, only in fucking Inglewood, man.
That's awesome. Dave, can you tell us about the a very strange or bizarre call that you went to?
Here's one. Non-violent, non-criminal, I guess you can say.
Yeah, just strange, weird.
Yeah, okay. So I got this one. So working night, and I'm getting a call of a house fire. So we wind up responding to the location to assist the fire department, and there is no way we are able to run because this place is like fully engulfed with flames, and flames are coming out, windows are popped, and fire department had just gotten there, and it was like, okay, this is why I became a police officer, because my ass ain't running into this burning building.
Yeah, your turn.
Yeah, tag, you're it. So yeah, sure enough, I mean, within seconds, the fire department, opened up, water. They're doing their thing, so let the professionals do their job. The fire gets extinguished, and for safety reasons, we do a walkthrough with the fire department, make sure everything's okay. And as we walk through, we can see, the source of the fire. And the source of the fire came from which was pretty bizarre, which was from, it was a raised foundation, and it came from the floor. So as I'm walking through the living room, as you walk in, they had one of these floor furnaces. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but a lot of the raised foundation houses here in California, the older houses, I would say predated like 1940s.
Like an old steam radiator? Or?
No, it's actually, it's kind of like an old steam radiator in a sense, but it's not exposed. It's actually underneath in the raised foundation.
Oh, okay.
So there's like a vent, so to speak, and it's a duct, and then the hot air comes through.
Okay.
So this is usually it's right next to the wall, and it comes out maybe about 2 feet, like by 2.5, kind of rectangular shape. So where this is situated, where it should be at, is now this huge hole, which is about, I would say, close to like about 3.5 feet in circumference, right? And it's, as you walk up to it, you can see the hole goes all the way straight down to the bottom of the floor, through the foundation all the way down.
Crawl space or basement or?
Yeah, well, a raised foundation usually it's like a crawl space. It's usually about like 2 feet up, above the ground. So we're looking down there, and the smoke's still coming out. And I got the flashlights, and you see what appears to be a charred body, and the charred body is on the floor, and you see this person, which you couldn't make out. You couldn't tell if it was a man, a female, or anything. It winds up being, later on, we find out that it was an elderly female.
It was like in the middle of the burnt circle? Like,
inside of it.
That's weird.
So from the wall, it's about 3.5 feet out, like in a diameter. And you see this person, it looks like, the leg was kind of like, if you're laying flat down on your back, and like you're doing crunches, or you're going to do a sit-up, you'll see your feet, like the knees, bent up.
Yeah.
And I can see that, and then I can also see the flesh, and I can see. I remember specifically seeing the bones completely exposed on the lower leg. Like the lower legs were completely nothing but bones, charred, and then on the upper thigh and the upper body, was the meat, which you can. It just smelled horrible.
Oh, I imagine.
Just this nasty smell, and of burnt wood, and whatever chemicals or whatever materials, metal, plastic, whatever it was, insulation,
boiled human,
literally charred human. It's just nasty. But to look at it and to see how bizarre that was, it was like, wow. So what happened was this lady, it was an elderly lady, and what happened, apparently one of the ducts underneath, there was like a leak, and the flame opened up because it's gas operated. Well, apparently it started to leak out, and that started to catch fire underneath the wood. And when the wood started catching fire, when she went to go over to investigate, it had burnt through so much already, but flames weren't coming out.
Okay.
She stood over it, and it collapsed. It just completely collapsed, and it fell down. Well, that also opened up, the gas flame, and it just set the place on fire. Apparently, when she went down, she broke her legs. She couldn't get up. She was trying to get out.
Yeah.
And there was evidence of that, and she just burned to a complete crisp. That, and I'd have to say I saw I would say probably in my career I saw close to about 8 to 10 bodies like that, similar fashion of people burning in residential fires. One of them was my last one, which ended up being, we were credited with saving something like about 100 elderly people in a 7-story building. The guy caught on fire. He was talking to dispatch, and he was on a wheelchair, and he got, fell asleep smoking.
Oh, man, classic.
His clothes was on fire. He's talking to dispatch, and then the rug caught on fire. And he was trying to say, hey, I'm stuck. I can't move because my jacket got stuck on my wheelchair, and I can't get out of here.
Oh, God.
And the floor is on fire.
A nightmare.
Yeah, and he's trying to get out. Well, long story short, we wind up being a unit that responds. We get there. I was working overtime. We had just finished dealing with a man and a woman in a domestic fight. The female's trying to cut him up with a machete. And we get up there, and we stop her. And
they're like, Dave, also there's elderly people on fire. Could you go take care of that?
Oh, I'm sorry.
God.
We took the lady we took the lady into custody on machete, and then that's when we responded over to the building. It was on the 3rd floor. The place was on fire. Sure enough, a couple of the guys in front of me, they kick open the door. As soon as they kick open the door, because we can hear the man screaming.
Oh, gee, I bet. Yeah.
And as the call was being dispatched, we can hear the man screaming. It was just horrible. So as soon as they kicked the door open, it just engulfs the whole hallway with smoke, and the heat was so intense. Get down on my knees and elbows and just crawl the hell out of there till we got to a safe spot, far enough from the open flame and the smoke. And then we just started evacuating people. We wind up evacuating something like about 100. They said they credit us with saving about 100 lives. We're literally lifting up elderly people, carrying them out of the building, to get them out of harm's way. And it was about 12 of us on the team that wind up later on. We wind up getting awarded a Medal of Valor for our multiple attempts of going back and forth of rescuing these elderly people, because they said it engulfed the flames and the smoke engulfed so much that the people that were in the neighboring units would have been affected by the
wow,
smoke.
that's incredible. Oh, my goodness.
So, yeah, it was pretty intense. And then to see the body afterwards come back, he was another guy that was here again, bones exposed, crispy critter. Fire inspector was there. And he says, my God, you were one of the guys that was in here. And I go, yeah, I was in here. He goes, let me show you something. He comes up and, you know the exit signs that are light, usually lit up in green?
Yep.
He goes, let me show you this. He goes, look at this. He goes, this. And I go, what is that? And it looked like this melted box of some form or another that was just plastic and metal that was just, burnt to unrecognizable. He goes, this is the exit sign that hangs over the door. I go, oh, yeah. He goes, in order for that to happen, it has to be 1,200 degrees plus. He goes, you guys were in 1,200 degrees.
That's crazy.
Sitting here and I go, fuck that shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, interesting stuff, seeing dead people. A lot of people think that cops, for the most part, they're, arresting people, fighting, shootouts and stuff like that. But there's a lot of stuff that cops do that just have nothing to do with police work sometimes. And,
sure.
Definitely going into a burning building, rescuing people, that's not something usually typically that cops do. Firefighters do.
Right.
But anyways, so yeah, weird stuff.
Can you tell us about your most intense or terrifying call on the job?
I guess I can say, the one that stands out to me more is it was an officer-involved shooting that I was in, and I, again, working overtime. Majority of my stuff happened when I was working overtime, especially as a detective, because, it was usually in the office or we did search warrants and stuff like that. But I was sitting with a group of detectives. It was about 10 of us. We were all having breakfast on a Monday morning, and we were at this place sitting down eating, and we heard a radio call come out. We called a 3-tone. It goes beep, beep, beep. Any unit to clear and handle. Possible 211 shooting victim now at, and they put out the location, which wind up being one of those cemetery flower shops. So they're usually just outside of the cemetery. And obviously they sell flowers and gift cards and things of that nature. And
very busy place in Inglewood.
Yeah. And of course, this is 9 in the morning, right?
Right.
So, we all looked at each other and okay, we just kept eating. Just another typical thing. They got patrol officers that are responding to the location. We were working a gang suppression unit on overtime, so it was okay, well, unless they mention the word gang,
right,
we're not responding, right? So, units start responding very quickly. They get on scene, and somebody puts out, information regarding suspect information, that there was a shooting victim, and it was a robbery. It was basically a botched robbery. Suspect had, used a gun, shot at the owner or the store manager, and taken the money and left the location in the direction of travel. Male black, driving a Saturn SUV, rusted color, and going down Manchester Boulevard westbound. So we're okay. Well, somebody will catch him. It's hey, or he's in the wind. As we continue to eat, within 3 minutes or so, another call goes out of another robbery taking place at the Radio Shack, matching the identical suspect criteria.
He's on a roll.
At that time, I looked at one of the guys who was working the robbery desk, and I looked at him and I go, hey, Gabe, I think this is your guy that you've been looking for. And he had been looking for a guy who was a serial robber, and he was looking at him for about 25 robberies that he had done in a week span. Exact same description of this guy. I'm like, dude, that's got to be your guy. So we just pretty much had finished our breakfast and go, let's go catch this guy. So we all get into our cars, and some of us are driving black and white, some of us are driving in detective cars, a plain wrap. And we start responding to the location, and we say, hey, we go on a sub-tactical channel. We go, hey, I'm going to respond here. I'm going to respond here. I'm going to respond here. So these guys already say, hey, they're going to go respond to where the shooting took place, and they're going to go respond to the radio shack.
So sub-tactical channel is just not the main police frequency. You guys are communicating on
right. So we can hear the main channel, but then we go off. So it might be like on your handheld, and then the car radio stays on the main channel.
Right.
So you can hear what's going on. And so we start responding. I tell my partner, because he's driving, I go, hey, man, Louis, why don't you try Manchester and Inglewood Avenue? I guarantee you this guy, something telling me that this guy might have gone over to a 7-Eleven, because he's heading down that direction, right? And he's heading in the direction towards LAX Airport. And there's the 405 freeway there, which is one of the major freeways. And, if you're going to get out of town and you want to do your robberies, you jump on the freeway and get the hell out. So we do. And as soon as we get into that location, and mind the way, it's pouring. It's in October, and it's just raining. They say it doesn't rain in California. Bullshit. It was raining that day for damn sure, and it was pouring. So we start slowing down, and I'm looking over to the right, which happens to be probably one of the busiest 7-Elevens I've ever seen in my life. Is like completely empty, and I don't see anybody in there. I go, this is 9 o'clock in the morning, 7-Eleven. I go, this is fucking something wrong.
Yeah, that's not good.
Right? And then so I look, and as I'm looking, I look to the left-hand side across the street. There's a small little parking lot where there's an alley. And sure enough, there it is. It's a backed-up, rusted-color SUV Saturn vehicle with a male black, wearing black and black over black hooded shirt or hoodie, a hoodie on, matching the identical description that was given out by the officer. And there he is. I go, whatever my unit call sign was at the time, I put it out and I go, hey, be advised, we got the suspect in sight. Well, at that time we had entered an intersection, and we had in order for us to safely, be able to move over to the right, we had to negotiate a U-turn. By the time we negotiated the U-turn, in heavy traffic, vehicle traffic, and in rain, we got back to where the person was, which was about 200 feet away. Guy was gone. Nowhere to be seen or found. We go up to the very first next street, see him, we look down out, I go, brother, go hit down Manchester and Century, and I put out the traffic. Units be advised, suspect traveling possibly in Manchester's a unit to respond to location, code 1. So we get back on Manchester. We start heading towards La Cienega. Sure enough, we see the suspect at the left turn pocket, getting ready to turn left as he's driving up to it. And I go, unit, be advised, facing, eastbound on Manchester, suspect is coming right towards you. Because he had black and white right across the street coming towards the intersection. As soon as I say that, the suspect is on a fresh red light. He takes the light, and the fucking chase is on. The guy gets right into the entrance of the freeway, and now we're chasing this guy. We wind up chasing this guy for about 33 miles from the city of Inglewood, high speeds of about 120 miles per hour. Oof. In the rain, in 9 o'clock traffic, which was bizarre because normally there'd be a lot of traffic in the South Bay area. That's called the South Bay Bend on the 405. And we intersected onto the 110. Well, when we got to that location, we were what's called the secondary unit. So the secondary unit in a police chase will always put out the radio traffic. The primary unit will, focus on strictly chasing the guy, not being on the radio, focusing on the actions of the suspect. So we continue to do that, but this guy hit it. I mean, at one point, he must have been hitting about 140 plus.
Whoa. Because
he pulled away from us, and I looked at my partner. He's going about 125, 130. And we're like having a hard time keeping up with this guy. So the primary unit loses him within the rain. And I told my partner, let's slow down, And on the sub channel, I tell the other unit in front of us, the chase unit, you continue to go down the 405 south. We'll take the 110 to see if he merges over to the 110, just to be on the safe side. We're not going to lose this guy. Now, mind you, this guy's driving erratic. He's driving in the rain, high speeds, with people on the road. For the most part, a watch commander would cancel that patrol chase because he's putting more people at risk.
Right.
But why are we not stopping? Why are we not stopping to chase this guy? Well, because of the violent crimes that he had committed. We still don't know if this guy's going to live or die, who he shot. So we got a potential homicide suspect with multiple robberies. guns involved. So
yes, you want this guy.
yeah, this guy's going to jail. So, we continue to follow this guy, and sure enough, we get to the 110 405 split. We can't see him, and all I see, I remember, out of the corner of my right eye, I see a blast of dirt spitting up on the air, like there's a spray of dirt. The yellow sand containers that are on the intersection on the when you merge onto a freeway.
Yeah, they're filled with water or sand usually.
Right,
yeah.
right. And they're used, those people, they miss and they'll wind up hitting the barrier and, to make sure that they don't kill themselves, right? So it's like a safety barrier. Well, he hits one of those things and the sand just goes everywhere. And I go, there he is. So the other unit stops, brakes, and it has to, back up and get through. Well, we continue to chase right on. So we're following him on the 110 freeway towards San Pedro. And as we continue to follow him, now the weather's starting to clear up. As we get closer to the ocean, the water, the raining, subsides, and we're continuing to follow this guy. So we're alone for the longest time, and we get up on this guy, and we can tell, and I've got a good description, and I'm looking at this guy, and I'm saying, okay, it appears to be a male black inside, matching the description of the previously mentioned, suspects at the shooting and at the other robbery.
Right.
Be advised, I also believe that, he had also robbed the 7-Eleven. Sure enough, came back, be advised, yes, he did rob the 7-Eleven.
Right.
Right? So now we got a guy who's robbed 3 different places, all within 5 minutes or so. Right?
Oh, man.
Shot a guy, right? And now he's continuing to chase, we're chasing him and he's running away from us, but we're not going to let this guy get away. So he gets off on surface streets down in San Pedro. He winds up going into a hospital. It's called Little Company of Mary. He gets into the parking lot, ditches the car, and now we're on foot pursuit. So it's me and another officer. We go in foot pursuit of this guy. And he hops over a fence, and he's a good. I want to say about the straightaway on a football field. You hit the curves, you slow down on the straightaways, you sprint them.
Right.
So he's about he's a straightaway away from us.
Okay.
So I don't know, maybe 300 feet or so. So he's hopping over the fences, and as I run up to the fence, I look and I go, oh, there's a door. The security of the big door, you can just kick it.
Right.
So I kicked the door, went over that, and we go over the fence. And next thing you know, in this huge, big parking lot in the back of the hospital. And there's people, in and out. I mean, it's like 10 o'clock in the morning. People are going to their appointments. And as we get towards the outside of the perimeter of the parking lot, we see him come up to one individual. It's a female white lady who all of a sudden, you can see her. She's like frantic. She's got her hands up. And, he's facing away from us, so I can't see where his hands are at.
Right.
And the whole time I'm yelling now at this point, I go, police, get inside, because I see a whole bunch of people. And I'm flanking them towards the left-hand side, and the other officer is like directly behind him, and we're yelling police. Well, he looks back and sees us, and again, we're about 200 feet away from him. So he ditches her, sees another lady who's trying to get into her car, and she successfully does. She has a bassinet. Or not a bassinet, but the baby basket. Well, the first lady, going back to the first lady, she was actually like 8 months pregnant.
Is this like near the reception area of the hospital? Or
No. This is in the parking lot of the hospital.
Okay.
At the back end of it. So the hospital's to the left, and this parking lot's directly right in front, so you can see it's just it's like a sea of cars. Like if you go to the mall.
Right. Okay, so it's not near the entrance.
No.
Okay.
It's like, exactly. So the mall's to the left, and then all of a sudden, the parking lot's there, and these guys filtering through the parking lot.
Just looking for a target.
I need to get into a car. I need to get out of here. So he tries to attempt carjack two ladies, one pregnant, one with a child. The second lady is able to get in her car, and she locks herself in. And this guy's banging, to come to find out later, he's banging the pistol on the window, trying to get in. And she just, covers her head. She gets, ducks down. She's like, no, don't do nothing to me. Well, at that time, a vehicle starts to back up, and it's occupied by an elderly female black in her 70s, and then, a younger male black who was in the, mid 40s, winds up being her son. And this guy was there for a hospital appointment, and kid or the man suffered from cerebral palsy, right? So he couldn't move, and he was stuck inside the car for the most part. Couldn't do anything. The suspect runs up to it as it's getting ready to move forward and opens the door. He gets an opportunity. He opens up the door, and lady stops frantically, and she puts it in park, and she goes like, "What? What do you want?" And, "Get the fuck out of your car, get out of your car." And she's like, "No, I'm not getting out of my car without my son. I'm going to stay in the car with my son. My son, he can't walk." So at that point now, I've come around and I've caught up to the backside of the vehicle, and I've taken, a tactical position.
You've been on foot this whole time.
I'm running.
So I'm running. Heaving, I'm sure.
I would say I was in really, really, really good shape.
I would have been heaving, is what I mean.
So, the running portion didn't really faze me that much, but, I at the time I was in really good shape, and so I, start giving out the commands. We start giving out the commands. I've taken cover. The other officers come up, and he's in the wide open space directly in the aisle over where this vehicle is at. And as soon as he's, "Police, put your hands up," guy turns around, and officer-involved shooting ensues. So, exchange gunfire between the suspect and the other officer. I hit the suspect.
How close is this guy to the potential victims that he's trying to?
He's touching them, like he's inside the vehicle, like literally, like got one hand inside the car.
So these rounds you're loosing, you're being real careful.
Very, very, very careful. So my backdrop is somewhat the other people, but very proficient with my shooting and my tactics. I wind up hitting the suspect. At that time, I wind up hitting him 3 times in the chest in a 10 ring.
Wow.
He turns around.
So now he's still standing up.
Right. He's still standing up, still functional. I'm like thinking, what the hell? I saw him get hit.
Whoa.
Everything slows down at that moment.
What caliber is this? I'm just curious.
I got a 45.
Okay, so it's not a little round. It's a big round.
Yeah, I got a big.
It's a man stopper.
230 grains. Just under 1,000 foot per second. Law enforcement plus P rounds. Hits him 3 times, right dead center in the chest, and I go, "What the fuck?" I hit him.
Yeah.
And this guy's turning. I go, "This motherfucker's got to have a vest on or something." So as he's turning around and I see him getting ready to motion to get into the vehicle, I start running towards him. And as I'm running, I take another shot. Boom. Smack in the back. Hit him. Doesn't fucking faze this fucker one bit.
How is he? A huge dude?
He's a big guy. He's about a good 6'1", 6'2", about 240, 250.
Okay.
Yeah, he's come to find out later on that this guy had just gotten out of the pen. He had been in prison. We had put him in. Inglewood Police Department had put him in 14 years before that.
Oh, wow.
For guess what? The same fucking thing.
Oh, my God.
Attempt murder and robbery. So he got out early release on good behavior. So the reason,
excellent,
right? The reason why he was there at that hospital was because his girlfriend was a nurse that worked there, and he had borrowed her vehicle and taken off and say, "Hey, babe, I got to go find some work."
You got a nurse that's a girlfriend. The money they make, and you screwed that up.
Hey,
what is he doing?
He was looking for work. He said and he was putting in work. He was putting in quality work.
Yeah.
So he winds up being inside this car.
So you hit him in the back, and he still gets in the car.
He still gets in the back. I hit him in the back. He still gets in the front seat of the car. Now he's in the driver's side. And at this point, now he's trying to manipulate the vehicle to move. But what I can see is now the elderly lady has gone from the back seat back in towards the front seat, and she's in the fight of her life to get him out of the car, because she's not leaving without her son.
Sure.
Now, when I come up, I run up to to where the door jam is at. The other officer had taken, because he had gotten fired at, he winds up taking cover. And I advance forward. I see this guy trying to manipulate the shift in the vehicle, which is, right close to his right knee. He's got one leg on the outside of the car, and he's got one leg on the inside of the car. And he's got the right leg, where the gas pedal's at. Now, as you know, with modern cars, for the majority of the cars, I think since early 2000s, you've had to step on the brake in order to engage the shifter. Right? The gear shifter ain't going to move unless you got that brake to press. Well, he ain't moving, but he ain't got his foot on the brake either. And I can hear the engine revving like he's trying to take off, but nothing's happening. Well, I think the guy had been in prison for so long that muscle memory kicked in.
Yeah, it's
cars before.
It's like stepping out of a time machine. What is this thing?
Right. You would just, you can not have the foot on the brake and you would manipulate the gear.
Right. Less safety features and all that. Yeah.
And it would take off on you. So, that he's trying to manipulate. He's trying to get it to go into gear, but he can't do it. So at that point now, I'm seeing this lady. She's screaming. She's, again, elder lady. And she's screaming and yelling at him and fighting with him. And he's pushing and tugging. And I see this guy. So I reach in with my left hand, with my right hand on my gun. And I grab this guy from the front of the shirt of his chest. And I yank this guy out. Talk about adrenaline, because as I'm a pretty strong guy. You know me, Steve.
Yeah, Dave, I think bench press is 400 or 500 pounds. He's not a small man.
Right. So, I move weight pretty good, and especially back then I was a lot stronger. But I don't care how strong you are. You can't just reach into a car with one hand and yank a 250-pound man out of the car with one hand.
Right.
Pretty impossible unless you're on some super, adrenaline rush or, methamphetamine or PCP or some bullshit like that. Right. So I yanked this fucker out of the car, and he still got one leg out of the car, one leg in the car, and he's standing up, hunched in, with his head in, and underneath, inside the vehicle, and I can see he's got a Smith & Wesson 45 in his right hand, and I know it's a Smith & Wesson 45 because I had a gun like it, identical to it, and I go, what the fuck? This guy still got the gun in his hand, and I'm like, drop the gun, motherfucker, drop the gun, and then all of a sudden he said, okay. Winds up playing possum on me by saying that. Gives himself enough time. He uses lag time against me to swing around through his left-hand side from the bottom. And he's reaching, he's facing forward, but his hand comes across his face with the gun and shoots behind him. Well, he winds up shooting behind him, and he hits me. The round that he shoots, winds up shooting off 2 rounds. The first round, as I see him moving, I'm moving back. Imagine the Matrix. Remember the movie The Matrix?
Oh yeah.
With Keanu Reeves, right? I do like the Matrix move in slow motion, and I'm leaning back as far. Exactly. Yeah. Everything's super slow motion, and it's no, right? So I lean back, and I'm like, fuck, I'm gonna get fucked up, man. This motherfucker's gonna kill me. And as I lean back, I feel like somebody just hit me with a fucking sledgehammer in my face. And the rounds go off, and as he's doing that, I still have him held, and I go, fuck this. And I had it, the pistol's in a cannon position in my right hand.
Your elbow's in your side.
Tucked into my ribs. It's a tactical position that most law enforcement agencies do at close quarter combat.
Right.
And I just start pumping off fucking rounds right into his fucking back. Rounds go into his fucking back. About the 4th round, his body goes limp. Instead of turning left, he turns right. He drops. He looks at me. His eyes roll back, and I go, I've seen that shit before. I know what the fuck that means. This fucker's gone.
Right.
And he hits the ground. Well, he hits the ground, and instead of falling on his back, he falls. His body rotates back, and he fucking falls face down with his hands underneath his waistband, right? I go, what the fuck? And I see his gun is on the right on the floor.
This guy won't cooperate even in death.
In death, right? It's like, motherfucker, get your hands behind your back. So, he's on the ground now. He's facing down. So I got a beat on this motherfucker. I still got my pistol pointed right in his fucking head. At this point, I go, I'm gonna give him the fucking coup de grace. This motherfucker comes up. I'm fighting a fucking zombie. Is the way I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
Right? I've already hit him 3 times in the chest, one directly in the back, and I just pumped another one. The guy, is he playing possum with me again?
God.
So as I do this, I hear this very distinctive sound, out of the side of my ears, and it's like, what the fuck? And it's coming straight out of my ear, and it's I don't know if you can hear that, but it sounds something like that. And I go, what the fuck? And I had heard that sound before, many years before, when I was chasing some robbery suspects out of a dry cleaner who just committed a dry clean. I ops them running out of the store. And I chased this guy. Long story short, he goes into an alley, goes underneath a car, and he's hiding from me, but I heard him stuffing money inside the wheel well of this fucking car, like he's going to come back and get it, right?
Right.
So I remember that sound exactly the same, and it took me back to that moment for a fraction of a second.
Wow.
And it takes me back, and I can visualize everything I just told you. That went through my head while I got this guy at gunpoint.
Right.
And I remember, I go, oh, that's fucking money. And it was money that had fallen off of his person onto the floor, and the wind was blowing it. And it was wind blowing. And like, Steve, I'm not sure if you've been in a shooting or not, or in a tense situation.
I've not been in a shooting, no.
Or some type of intense situation where you're everything.
You're hypervigilant.
Very much so. It sounded like it was just like I was an ant, and his money was moving next to me, and I can just hear everything. Like, what the fuck? I can hear the wind rustling. The money just flying everywhere.
You could pick it up like it was right outside your ear.
Exactly. And it's like, what the fuck? And then so I look down and I see the .45 pistol that he had on the ground. I see the money flying, and there's like a bag full of money that had fallen and just gone everywhere. 20s, 5s, 10s, everywhere. And I look to the side of my eye, and I look and I see clumps of blood that were on the door jamb where I originally had shot this guy. And they're just like, it's dripping blood like everywhere. What the fuck? It's a lot of blood. Well, going back to the suspect, when I got him gunpoint, 2 other officers came up. I go, be careful. I think this fucker's got a vest on. Because there's no way I could shoot him that many times and him just fucking still trying to get into the car,
right,
drive away, have the presence of mind to say, okay, don't, and have the fucking presence of mind to be able to turn around and shoot at me, hit me, which, by the way, that first round that he shot off, it grazed me, and it fucking hit the tip of my nose. Wow. The concussion was so great.
From coming out of the muzzle.
The muzzle blast, I thought I had gotten hit, and I thought I was missing my teeth. I thought I was because everything felt so fucking numb.
Yeah.
So I tell my partner after he hooks him, he handcuffs this guy. And, typical. We don't give a fuck if he's a fucking zombie as far as I'm concerned. At least he can break through some handcuffs. We'll shoot you some more. We'll get a shotgun now, right? Excuse me. So I told my partner, I go, Gabe, check me out. I think I'm fucking shot, bro. He goes, where? He goes, fuck, dude, you got a bunch of blood all over your face. He goes, fuck. I go, well, just check me out, man. Just make sure I'm all right. So he does. He goes, nah, dude. He goes, you got, a cut on your nose. He goes, other than that, you seem okay. And I'm like, he literally like lift up my shirt, runs his fingers through my vest and underneath my vest.
Because you're so hopped up, you wouldn't even know.
Right. He wants to make sure that I got hit. And I'm like, okay. So, when I look back at the whole situation, I'm like, fuck. Why would he have so much blood on the door jamb? Well, what happened was the first couple of rounds that I told you I hit him with, he was clinically dead. The fucking rounds ruptured his heart. So the blood that was on the door jamb was like thick fucking blood that was pumping out of his chest.
Whoa.
And it had hit through the little holes and through his sweatshirt onto the door jamb. That's how much blood he was like losing, right?
Wow.
So that was crazy because I never forgot the dripping and watching the dripping from it's sliding down. It's just dripping on the bottom of the vehicle. You can just hear it dripping.
Like red paint.
Yeah. And, to come to find out this guy didn't have a fucking vest on. And the toxicology report came back that the only thing he had in his bloodstream was marijuana. No cocaine, no PCP.
I guess the marijuana didn't chill him out at all, huh?
Not at all. But it was pretty bizarre, through the whole situation. And going through that and, I had been involved in other things where, you see certain things and, it's always the perception of being involved in a situation like that. And, like the majority of society thinks that why did the police officers shoot him so many times, or why did the police officers didn't shoot him in the arm or in the leg or something like that. And here's case in point, where you shoot somebody, and I've seen where, guys got shot with one fucking round in a fucking chest and they're dead.
Right.
That's
why they say it's shoot to stop.
Right. Shoot to stop the threat, not to kill. But Yeah, I mean,
he wasn't stopping. I mean,
he wasn't stopping.
What are you supposed to do?
I definitely let's look at it like this. If I did, if based on the shooting, if you look at it, I definitely shot to kill because where did I shoot him at? Right.
Right. Well, we should always. Everybody should agree. We should err on the side of safety for the good guy.
For the good guy, right?
So if this guy has to die to make sure that you can go home,
right?
That's the way it is.
I guess what I'm saying is so it doesn't get misinterpreted. If you looked at it technically, where the shots were placed and what damage they did, all intents and purposes, the shots that were made and the impact it had on his body with the blood actually gushing out of his body, you would say those are kill shots. Well, technically they were kill shots.
He just had an extra 30 seconds or a minute left.
His adrenaline was so high that he just kept going on. So it is shoot to stop the threat, not shoot to kill. Because if you shoot to kill, you might just be dead.
Right.
He'll survive. Obviously, he survived the initial volleys, the 4 rounds that went into his body.
He was a dead man at that point.
He was a dead man,
but he was still.
But he was still functioning.
Animated.
Right?
Wow. That's like a zombie. Really.
Right.
Damn.
So paramedics were summoned. We were in LAPD and sheriff's borderline. So Los Angeles fire department responded to the location, and they start doing, they administered first aid to this guy, which I get it. They're going to do what they got to do. They stuck a thermometer in his liver and it still had, well, duh. The guy was just fucking alive like a minute ago. What do you expect his body temperature to be like? And then they started working on this guy. So they start ripping off all his clothes and everything. And all of a sudden, you talk about a bizarre viewing of something. As they're doing the chest compressions, I had to look closer and I go, what the fuck? The expended rounds were being pumped out of his chest. And I literally saw them coming out through the exit wound.
Oh my God.
And they were pumping out. And I saw like 3 rounds. Obviously, they were my rounds.
Right.
That had gone through and through. These are the ones had been the ones from close quarter combat directly to his back. And I'm seeing him pump out. I'm like, oh, that's fucking weird.
I've never heard of that. Yeah, that is bizarre.
It was bizarre. And, everything was being held as evidence. And the funny thing was, this guy, an officer, big fucking guy. Always, a lot of guys didn't like him too much because he was kind of like really, serious officer and the whole bit. And, you know, I never had a beef with him. I liked the guy a lot. But he came up and he was one of these guys that was like really stickler for the rules type thing and kind of certain way about him that kind of would annoy you. Very savvy, very tack savvy kind of guy.
Okay.
Electronics and all that. That was his forte. So he winds up coming up to the scene and he's helping me preserve the scene. And one of the paramedics want the gun to be moved. He goes, I'm not moving. We're not moving the gun, man. That's evidence. He goes, you need to move that fucking gun for our safety. He goes, the fucking gun ain't moving. You move it, I'm gonna fucking arrest your ass. I was like, here we go. Cops and firefighters.
Right.
He's a pretty big guy, and I was like, thank God this guy's here because, man, fuck.
You were probably zoned out by then.
Yeah, at that time, it's like, man, the funny thing is, like, I don't ever wish bad upon anybody. Like, I wish this never would have happened. Geez, man. This happens to me. And I kid you not, from ever since the shooting, where the impact of I forget stuff sometimes.
Really?
I kid you not, it happens to me. Like right now, I'm trying to think of the word and I can't.
It happens to me all the time too. I have no excuse.
It was very unfortunate. That's the word I was looking for. And it's sad that a life had been taken, and the experience that the victims were all placed in, from the store owner, the people that were in the store when the shooting took place, the people at the Radio Shack, what they had to undergo, the 7-Eleven folks, the first lady who was pregnant, who happened to be a wife of our hardcore district attorney. She wound up being a tremendous witness during this ordeal. We worked with her husband for years on high-profile gang cases. And then the lady who's inside the vehicle with, who tucked in there right quick with her baby inside the car seat. And then, the last 2 victims, which were the elderly lady and the the man who comes out, and I remember him coming out after the whole shooting was done. He had one of these walkers. He looks like a young guy, but he looks like he's all busted up. And he looks right at me and he says, "Sir, I am so sorry. I have cerebral palsy. I couldn't get out of the car."
Oh.
And I remember as he's doing that, they're working on this guy doing fucking chest compressions, and I go, "Please bring that fucker back to life so I can beat the fuck out of him for victimizing these poor fucking innocent people."
Tons of trauma from that one guy.
Right.
All different lives.
Like, why couldn't you have fucking been? How come I couldn't have been your first stop?
Right.
Victimize me. Bam. There it is. But then look what it took for me to take this guy and subdue his behavior to stop the threat. It was quite a significant effort that was taken by all the officers involved in that situation that day, and to mention the young officer that was with me and myself, and the sacrifice that I did in order to make sure that this guy wasn't going to kill these people inside this car, because he was only going to take so much of her batting him upside the head while he's driving down the street without putting around it, in between her eyes.
Right.
So, and risking, me not seeing my family and shooting me. So look at all these victims that took place, all because of this negative element. So, yeah, it's a very unfortunate situation, but, it happened. Bizarre thing happened. The lady that was in the car, the elder lady, when he was struggling with her, he literally breaks her arm. He does like a spiral break on her arm.
Ooh.
So because we were in the hospital, she was administered in and given immediate treatment. Hospital staff was amazing. It just took her straight up and x-rayed her. Well, he ended up breaking her arm. Here's the bizarre thing. About 4 or 5 months later, I'm sitting at home, and I walked out in front, and I see this fucking guy looking at me, broad daylight. And he starts walking up towards me, and he's just, like at a heavy foot, pace. I'm like, I don't have my gun on me or anything like that. I'm at home. And this guy's coming up, and he goes, "David Carrasquillo?" I was like, "Here we go."
Oh, man.
And I see
a moment of peace.
And I'm looking at his hands, and I'm like, oh, he's got papers in his hand. I go, "What do you want?" He goes, "Serving you subpoena to appear in court." I go, "What the fuck for?" He goes, "Well, aren't you an officer with Inglewood Police Department?" I go, "Yeah." I go, what gives?" He's like, "Oh, this is about some lady that's saying that you shot her in the arm." I go, "What the fuck are you talking about?" So I start looking at it, and I recognize the name, and I recognize the case, and I recognize everything. And the guy's, he winds up being pretty cool kid, not kid, but he was a man. And I start talking to him. He was like explaining to me. He goes, "Yeah, apparently she said that one of your bullets, strayed and hit her in the arm, ricocheted, and broke her arm during the altercation."
Really?
Yeah. And I go, "What you got to be fucking kidding me." I go, and I start laughing. I go, "Fucking typical." Because I knew that we had, like, on the onset, within minutes of the incident, she had an x-ray.
Right.
What the fuck do you think the x-ray is going to show? And sure enough, it did. It was a spiral break, from him torquing her arm. Well, this fucking lady winds up getting, advised by somebody to go and fucking file a suit against the city for, for damages, to her vehicle, for, the shooting, being shot by a police officer in the line of duty.
So was her arm hit or no?
No.
That blows my mind.
But where she got caught, she had put an insurance claim and got paid. Well, she had gotten paid by the city for the vehicle and to fix everything. And she went to go make a file with the insurance claim. Long story short, she was trying to double dip on this whole thing. And then blame me for breaking her arm, with a round.
It's unbelievable to put yourself out there like that, absorb that much trauma that you carry with you to this day. Right. And on your day off, some guy's like, "Hey, by the way, you're in trouble."
Right.
For this.
And I reached out. I never forget. I reached out to our city attorney's office, and I go, "What the fuck is this?" He's like, "Oh my God, David, we're so sorry. We just found out ourselves. We didn't anticipate that they were going to reach out and try to subpoena you. Well, we're going to take care of this matter." Long story short, what winds up happening is the city actually filed against her and successfully prosecuted her for filing a false police report and the double dipping shit.
Wow.
So, you're either going to go with your insurance company or you're going to go with, with the city, and the city had already taken care of the problem, and now she's trying to make these false claims that, And then it was all backed. All my rounds were accounted for inside the suspect, for the exception of the ones that leaked out after the compressions. Again, that was bizarre. But, I mean, it's the funny thing is, like, we're sitting here talking about it, and it's not every day that you hear an officer go through something like this. It's not very typical. But the sad thing is a lot of officers have gone through stuff like this, or they've been in a position where they were almost in a situation. I'm sure at your time as a police officer, many of the situations that you were involved in, you stopped the actions of the suspects because of your training, your ability to read situations, and your drive to continue. You stood your ground, and things worked out to the better of everybody. For everybody, somebody went to jail. Oh well. Someone went to prison. Oh well. But nobody got killed that day, or nobody got hurt that day, or nobody was scarred for the rest of their life as a victim, as this guy had done. But I guess it doesn't stop the actions of a lot of police officers, and what they do and the trauma that they endure. I had a lot of suspects that I had arrested during the course of the years where, they were pistol pointed, had a gun to the back of their head, and I go, I will fucking kill you if you fucking move. Not I will shoot you, I will fucking kill you. I will blow your fucking head off if you move.
And why do you do that?
Because they had
reason, because it works, right?
Well, it worked, and it was the only language they understood.
Right.
And two, because I saw the butt of the gun as their hand was on it.
Right.
A lot of officers would have just said, just shoot him. I'm like, I can't. Because you know what? They'll, when I talk to them a certain way, they listen to me. And they put their hands up, handcuffed them, got the gun. Yeah. Was I taking a chance? Well, you know what? I think that's why we all signed up, knowing that we had to take chances.
Absolutely.
But we always had to do the right thing. Integrity was big. Integrity has always been big for me. And
you got to be able to sleep at night.
Exactly. And that's exactly was my thing. At the end of the day, do we still have nightmares as cops? I think we all do. Some of us have some real horrible dreams, I still have dreams about, the shooting, whether it's like, pulling a gun. I think every cop's had something similar to this where, you're in a situation and all of a sudden you pull out your gun, all of a sudden you squeeze the trigger and the gun won't fire.
Right.
Or, the bullet drops right outside of the muzzle, and it's like all sorts of weird shit. Or the rounds hit the suspect and the suspect's like laughing at you or some shit like that.
Cement feet, you can't move.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like really bizarre. So, my hand's out to those that are, have done, who've been there and are still doing this job and who are still applying to become police officers.
What's your advice, Dave, for someone to help keep that trauma from affecting you too much? You know what I mean? Because you don't want to let it build up, and then most guys I talk to let it build up over a career or whatever, and then finally they talk to somebody or they find an outlet or something. But
I believe strongly that, and I'll answer your question, but I believe strongly that we are all products of our environment. And whether, you had a long career where you didn't do much or you didn't have a lot of major incidents, there was always that one thing that was in the back of your mind is like, this could be the last day I live.
Right.
Or, you were the cop that it happened to on a regular, like my career kind of was, where it was very active. And then sometimes you don't even think about it because you become immune to it. So both are very damaging to you. The anticipation that something's going to happen, the anxiety associated to this could be the last day, or, this has happened so much, I don't give a fuck anymore. If it happens, it happens. They're both detrimental to you.
Yeah.
My advice is acknowledging, that you, do work in an environment that this could happen to you. 2, knowing your limits, your strengths, your weaknesses. Knowing that at any given time, you have the ability to just walk away. It's a career. You're not being mandated to do something. You're not being, forced to do something. You're not by any contract or anything. No one's going to say you have to go out and patrol the city of Los Angeles or Inglewood or, Cape Cod.
Right.
You don't have to. You don't have to. It's a choice. In understanding that, 1, it's a choice. And that if it affects you to that much that you need to be able to speak to others about it.
Talk to your wives about it. Talk to your girlfriends. Talk to your husbands. Talk to your therapists. Therapy, yes. Fuck yeah, therapy. I think therapy is fucking great. I came from an environment where it was like you get into a shooting, you went to go talk to the psychologist, and you said the right thing, so you knew that you can go back and be fit for duty to go back to work.
Right.
And you said what you needed to say. Oh yeah, I've been sleeping good. Yeah, no, hey, listen, I felt bad for the situation. As a cop, I had to do what I needed to do. That's what I swore to uphold. The peace and the safety of the community. He was a big threat to the community. I had to take action. I don't feel, I did what I needed to do. No, I don't feel happy about killing them, but I had to do it, right? Or whatever the situation is, right?
Right.
But inside, you're keeping this, or you're surrounded by the hero system, where your colleagues are coming up and you fucking good job, man. That's how you fucking do it,
Right.
Good boy, good job. It's like, fuck you. I just killed somebody. It doesn't feel fucking right. There isn't no fucking good about that. There's no good boy. There's no attaboys. It's like,
yeah.
How about, man, Dave, I'm sorry you had to go through that shit. That's pretty fucked up shit, man. If you need to talk, let me know. And guys who have been through it, like I had worked with guys that had been in so many fucking shootings, man. I worked with 2 guys that had been something like 20 some odd shootings and had killed something like 17 people as partners. I kid you not. I kid you not. And both of them, one was my supervisor, another one stayed as a patrol officer. They both did like 30 years on the job. They were the nicest guys, and you know what? They were the guys that would come up and they would be the reasoning voice. It was like, hey man, I know it's tough. I know this is hard. You're gonna be okay. Take some time off if you need time off. These are the guys that when they were involved in something it was in the early 80s, they were involved in a shooting one night of a robbery suspect. Long story short, the guy had a gun. They wind up killing this guy. They had to shoot and kill him. Now, by this time, it was something like their 5th or 6th officer-involved shooting where, similar action had taken place. And they literally said, hey, you know what, can you give us some time off? And I think we need some time off, And they're like, no, man, we're short-staffed. We need you back here the next day.
Oh, gosh, that's terrible.
So the very next day, they go back to work as partners, and something very similar happened. Next thing you know, they fucking shoot and kill another guy the very next day.
Wow.
At that point, they finally said, yeah, okay, you want you boys to take some time off. So, I can guarantee you that's not the first time that's ever happened. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But, I mean, similar behavior has been known through history of police work, military. My advice to other people is to understand your limitations, understand your strengths, understand your weaknesses. Don't ever be ashamed to have to speak to somebody. If it doesn't feel right, it's probably because it isn't right. Or maybe it's the lack of understanding, your lack of knowledge of understanding what your emotions are. Like I realized I had post-traumatic stress. And it wasn't just from one particular incident. It's just from a career of incidents. You and I have talked about various incidents and things that you yourself have been involved in. To this day, when you talk about them, you can tell.
Yeah.
Your body behavior. It's like, seeing somebody ripped up and shredded up or dead in a bizarre, horrific way. I don't care how you put it. It's horrible. It's just horrible. I like get all teary-eyed now when I'm driving down the street and I see a little squirrel that got ran over. It's like, oh, poor little squirrel.
Right.
You didn't do nothing to nobody, little guy. And it's like, it's weird. Now you imagine doing that to a human.
Yeah.
Good or bad. I mean, it's just the whole, when you look at the totality of the circumstances that surrounding, somebody being of a criminal element or somebody being involved in that, and you take the history of that person and go back, where did they go wrong? If you can put back the hands of time and go back, could we have fixed the situation?
Yeah.
And it makes you think about that.
Think about them. They were probably they were little kids at one time.
Exactly.
They were like everybody else.
They were playing hide and seek. They were probably playing cops and robbers, cowboys and Indians, whatever the case was. They're human beings. There's somebody's daughter. There's somebody's son. There's somebody's parent.
Yeah.
There was a YouTube video after this guy that got involved in the shooting with, and it was like 2 years later. Somebody called me up and go, "Hey man, you should check out this link." So they send me the link, and I go, "Okay," and I had no clue what it was about. So I started watching it. And it wound up being he had three boys. and they were talking about his dad. And they didn't accuse the police department of killing him. They didn't say nothing. And they even admit, one of them even admit, yeah, my dad said he did some bad things, but we want everybody to know my dad was a good man. We loved him. He loved us. And I'm like, this is a fucked up video for me to watch right now.
Yeah.
You know, and it wasn't that they meant anything negative or wrong about it. They just want to remember the goodness of their dad. Even if it was small.
Yeah.
You know, or maybe it was the greatest part of him, but the sad thing is his bad part of him overwhelmed his good parts.
Yeah.
You know, they took over, you know, at that particular moment, you know. So, yeah, you know, it's not something that's easy to talk about sometimes. It's not something that's easy to deal with, but I would recommend therapy, talking to a professional, talking to people who have actually been involved in situations.
Everybody I know, and I've talked to somebody myself, and you always feel better.
Oh, yeah.
You always feel better.
Because sometimes you think you're the only one.
Right.
And when you realize you're not the only one that's gone through this, it makes you feel better. It's like, okay, I'm not by myself here.
Absolutely.
You know, feeling bad, feeling guilty, feeling shameful. Like, you know, I come from a very strong religious background, and, you know, and my parents were both ministers, and it was like, throughout my whole childhood, it was thou shalt not kill, you know, one of the 10 commandments. And
sure,
you know, it's like, you know, it's in your head. It's like, what the fuck, man, this ain't cool, you know. And then you realize it's like, well, you know, there's I wish I could quote it right now, but it's in Romans in the Bible. You know, not to get biblical or religious here, but it does talk about, you know, basically saying like law enforcement having to do their job.
Yeah.
And, you know, for the, you know, it's the safety of community and to, you know, to do the right thing. So, you know, it's just a broader understanding of what happens. So I can only say, you know, seek assistance, you know, if somebody, and it doesn't have to be a shooting. It could be a fucking accident.
Sure.
You know, it could be somebody who commits suicide right in front of you and jumped off a building, and, you know, when they hit the ground, you know, the blood splat all over you, you know. And horrible things happen in this world.
Right.
And it's not normal. And it's sad when you're so exposed to so many of those things and it becomes like second nature or it's normal.
Yeah, that is.
You know, it's like, you know, and I know that I went through a career of doing that. Like, you know, like seeing cops laugh over the body of a dead person. It's not like because they're laughing at the body or the situation. It's that they have to.
They're coping.
They're coping. They have to kind of alienate themselves from that horrible situation. Because if I sit there and I cry about this, or if I see this kid, you know, get ran over, you're not going to last.
Right. Yeah.
You know, 5 minutes, much less 30 years. So yeah, that's my advice.
Hey man, I really appreciate you coming on, Dave. That was some good stuff.
All right, man. Well, listen, I hope it, you know, your channel, I really appreciate and thank you for the work you're doing. I know that, you know, through your commitment, your words, your wisdom, hopefully you can reach out and touch a lot of people, not just cops, but mainly, you know, the general public that have very limited knowledge of what it is to become a peace officer, whether it's, you know, in a busy city, small city, big town, it doesn't matter. You know, I appreciate you putting that image, the message out there and reaching out to us. If anything I can do, I can help. Appreciate it, brother.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, man.